O'clock. It's time to start tonight's Westwood Planning Board meeting. My name is Chris Paff. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting, and we will do a roll call for attendance from our current board members. And when I call your name, if you just raise your hand so that everyone watching, if they can't hear, they can still know, I guess, everyone's here. Dave Atkins.
Here.
Ellen Rawlings.
Here.
Kate Wynn.
Here.
And I'm Chris Paff. And that's it for tonight. Let's see, all meetings are going to be recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable TV, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also available on Westwood Media Center YouTube channel and live streamed. If you're having any trouble, sorry, I'm going to move this over here. If you have any trouble logging into Zoom, please go to zoom.us and click on Join Meeting and enter the meeting ID 838-5537-9148 to eliminate background noise. We will begin the meeting with only the board members and professional staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to minimize background noise. Before we begin, I will outline our process. The planning board meetings consist of three types of agenda items. We consider applications that have been submitted to the board and conduct public hearings where a public comment portion is required. We have other applications that are not formal public hearings, and the public will have an opportunity to comment, but it will be at the board's discretion. Third, we will review administrative items where board members will discuss issues and deal with items such as approval of meeting minutes, planning future agendas, and hear updates from staff. Prior to each agenda item, the chair will announce the item and provide some descriptive context. For applications, the chair will invite the applicant to address the board and give a presentation summarizing what's been requested. Board members receive the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them. Board members may ask questions during and following the presentation. Professional staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. If the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to the public comment portion of the public hearing and will restate the instructions. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting application or from a telephone dial-up. We will be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to that part of the meeting, I will remind everyone of the process to raise your hand by hitting the raise hand button in the Zoom meeting or pressing *9 if dialing in by phone. Following the public comment portion, the board will deliberate and make a decision or continue the hearing to a specific future date. All remote meetings require that votes will be by roll call. When a motion and a second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion before proceeding to the roll call vote and will then restate the results of the vote. Okay, need a drink of water? No, we can just start. I'm kidding. All right, Abby, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
No changes.
Okay, then first on the list would be the, 10 Longwood Drive.Fox Hill Village. I believe they have a request to be made. Is the applicant available?
Yes, I am bringing in the applicant now.
Okay.
And then, Chris,
We'll
do you want, we also invited the Housing Partnership and Housing Authority members here. Should I see that they're here. Do you want me to bring them in now or wait till we open it up to the?
Why don't we wait for discussion? Okay, is everyone here from the applicant's perspective? Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Johanna Schneider. I'm an attorney at Hemingway & Barnes in Boston, and I'm joined tonight by Heather Sawitsky and Tony Amico from Fox Hill. We were last before this board in late February, requesting that the board authorize the planning board the building department to sign off on 2 partial temporary certificates of occupancy for the Fox Hill expansion project. Just to refresh the board's recollection, this project is an addition to the existing Fox Hill facility, consisting of 24 assisted living units and additional amenity space and related site work. This board approved an EIDR permit for the project in September of 2019, and the ZBA granted a special permit for it in November of 2019. As part of the ZBA process, this board reviewed our proposal for providing via an off-site arrangement the affordable housing required pursuant to bylaw section 8.4 and made a recommendation at that time to the ZBA that such proposal was at least equivalent in serving the town's housing needs as an on-site proposal. As some of you may recall, that proposal called for Fox Hill to deed property owned by an affiliate of Fox Hill at 230 High Street to Till, which is a nonprofit operator of state-funded group homes for adults with acquired brain injuries. Over the last year or so, we have been working diligently with Till and the town to finalize the details of that arrangement, which has led to some changes from what we initially proposed. These changes were described in the May 6, 2021 letter that we provided to this board, but I will briefly summarize them. The first tenet of this is that the 230 High Street property will be conveyed to Till, subject to a restriction requiring that a group home with 5 units eligible for listing on the subsidized housing inventory be maintained on that property in perpetuity, and that if Till or its successor at any point fails to provide 5 affordable units within the group home, title to 230 High Street will transfer to the town within 90 days at no cost to the town. The town would then have the option to find another operator to use the group home as a single affordable housing unit, or to sell the property and use the proceeds to provide additional affordable housing units within the town of Westwood. Additionally, Fox Hill would make a monetary contribution of $399,000 to the Westwood Affordable Housing Associates, Inc. in equal installments of $16,625, payable upon the initial leasing of each of the 24 assisted living rental units within the Fox Hill project. If the units are not leased by June 30th, 2023, Fox Hill will make a final payment comprised of the difference between installments paid to date and the $399,000 total. All of these provisions are memorialized in an affordable housing restriction and in a municipal affordable housing contribution agreement, which were negotiated with the town and which Fox Hill has executed and delivered to the town as of June 3rd. As now structured, this proposal provides the town with 1 more affordable unit than if Fox Hill were to provide the required units on site, and through the monetary contribution and required transfer of title of 230 High Street, provides the town with further security by giving it the means to maintain the necessary affordability to offset the Fox Hill project, even if at some point in the future, the group home were to cease to operate. So with that, we would respectfully request that this board find that the modified affordable housing proposal is at least equivalent to the provision of 4 on-site affordable units in terms of serving the town's affordable housing needs. We're happy to answer any questions about the revised proposal.
Okay, thank you. Open it up to questions from board members to the applicant, if there's any. Yes, Ms. Rawlings.
This actually may be more of a question for our town council, but I just want to be clear. I read through the agreement and I noticed that it was just cited here as well. One of the options, if the deed for the land were to revert to the town, is that the town could sell the property. But if I understand correctly, it's pretty ironclad that the proceeds from that sale would be required to be used towards replacement affordable housing. Am I understanding that correctly?
Believe that you are, and it's doubtful that we would want to sell the property. It's more likely, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, it's more likely we would make it into a single family if we couldn't find an operator to operate a group home. So it gives us a number of options in the future to protect our affordable housing stock, to prevent us from having an unfriendly 40Bs at some point in time in the future.
Understood. I wanted to be clear on the one particular notation about the option to sell. So it sounds like that it's whatever option the town would choose, regardless, it would still somehow result in affordable housing units. Thank you.
I think that's correct.
Any other questions from board members?
I have a question.
Okay, yeah, Dave. Yeah, Dave.
I don't know if you can speak to this, but kind of like, what's the root cause of the delay in the Till property? Like, it seems like all of this would be resolved if that, if the place were just done and could be occupied. Well, except for the deed restriction and all, but the timing issues, like, do we have any insight into what's going on there?
I'm going to ask Tony Amico to provide us with a little bit more flavor than I'm able to. Construction projects take a long time, and I think, the pandemic was not helpful in terms of, both Till and Fox Hill needing to manage, those conditions in their properties. But Till has been diligently working towards completion of its project. Again, Tony Amico is here. He's on the site. He sees what they're up to. It sounds to me like they are going to be wrapping up pretty shortly.
I mean, the project is moving slower than we would like to see it. She did have delays related to COVID initially. The contractors have been moving slow. At this point, the exteriors are the exterior of the building is completed. They're inside, finishing the electrical and plumbing and ready to put the walls up. At that point, it is not much of an interior in there. It's basically 5 bedrooms and a living room. So I spoke to Daphne from the Till group yesterday, and she's still optimistic that it's going to happen in early July. So, I mean, I think we're probably, realistically 30 days away from that being completed, but there was a good sized crew there today.
And just in terms of another update on Till's progress, it's our understanding that DDS, which is the state entity through which Till works, has identified 5 qualified residents, and they have hired a resident manager. So we expect that, all of this is going to come to fruition relatively quickly now.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if this is the right time to broach this, but again, some of the board members were here in February when we were last before you, and may recall that at that time we did ask the board to authorize the planning department to sign off on 2 partial temporary certificates of occupancy for the project. The first was a partial temporary certificate of occupancy for the first floor of the project, in which the new residential amenity spaces will be located. This is space that is proposed to be used by both Fox Hill's current residents as well as future residents of the 24 new assisted living units. As a reminder, the amenities include an expanded health clinic, a new fitness center, a physical and occupational therapy clinic, a classroom, eating options for the residents and the like. Construction of this space actually is now complete, and we're expecting the building inspector to sign off on it early next week. And we would love to be able to obtain a partial temporary certificate of occupancy for the space as soon as we get that sign off. So if that's something that the board is comfortable sort of reaffirming its vote on from February, we would be most appreciative of that. Another thing that we did broach with the board back in February was a request for support with respect to a temporary certificate of occupancy for the 3rd floor of the project to enable gradual occupancy for up to 12 assisted living residents starting August 1st. This is an important part of this project as well. Operation of these assisted living suites will allow Fox Hill to provide care to frail elders within the community who have significant needs for support services and whose quality of life would be greatly enhanced by moving into a small house environment with 24/7 care. We had raised this request with the board back in February. The general sentiment of the board seemed to be that the board would like us to make more progress towards finalizing our affordable housing deal with the town before taking any action on that request. As we've discussed tonight, we have reached agreement. We've delivered signed documents to the town. We're prepared to record them on the registry of deeds as soon as the town signs them. And therefore, we would actually love it if the board would also provide its support to allow us to move that piece of the project forward as well.
board members, I'm sorry, Chris just let me know he lost internet connection. He's trying to get back in. I don't see him just yet, but I could elaborate on that. Staff, if you recall, and I tried to summarize in my report to you, there were the zoning board condition 3 had to do with the affordability requirement. There were 5 parts to that, 3A through F. Staff has reviewed these agreements that the applicant has provided, and we are supportive of the applicant's request for these new agreements. We think those fulfill conditions 3B and 3C. It's essentially securing that in perpetuity clause for the affordable units. However, we still have concerns about occupancy of the assisted living units until the group home units become available. It was condition 3D, which tied the occupancy of the Fox Hill assisted living units that was tied to the occupancy of the group home, because that's when they become eligible for listing on the town's subsidized housing inventory. Staff doesn't feel that the agreements provided addresses that yet. So we're not supportive of occupancy of the assisted living units at this time with these agreements. We've reviewed the agreements provided and would support that, but we still have concerns about the occupying the assisted living units at this time.
Abby, could you clarify what the town's position is with respect to the occupancy of the amenity space?
We would support that. So with this request that's before the planning board, and we have the housing partnership and the housing authority here as well. If the planning board is amenable to a positive recommendation on the 2 agreements, then the planning board would submit their recommendation to the zoning board in support of modifying that's conditions 3B and 3C. And we think the motion would be to support occupancy of the non-living space, so that the amenity space of the pool and the cafe would be permissible. If the
Thank you.
zoning board,
One more point of clarification. I just want to speak to Johanna. You gave some dates that suggested that you would be ready to request a temporary certificate of occupancy next week. The procedure, actually, you have to go to the zoning board first. As you know, you have an application for June 16th. Assuming the planning board votes in favor tonight, the zoning board takes the planning board's recommendation and votes in favor of the amendment of their decision. Then that decision has to be recorded, and there's a 20-day appeal period. And it's at the conclusion of that appeal period that the building commissioner could issue a temporary certificate of occupancy. So we're getting into probably somewhere between early to mid-July at that point. So it may not make a difference. In other words, the planning board's recommendation, the zoning board's decision, if everything goes along according to that schedule, and if Till actually completes their work and is ready for occupancy in early July, as you suggest, then you're all set to go with both. So you might not even need the temporary certificate of occupancy. You might be ready for a final.
Okay, thanks, Nora.
Abby, am I back in?
yes.
Okay. My apologies to everyone. I appear to have lost all Comcast connection in my house. Everyone's lost everything. So I'm on my phone now. So I have limited access to information, and I apologize. So I missed what was discussed. I do, as I understand, let me catch up. We were talking about allowing residents to move into the assisted living portion prior to Till opening.
We
Is that what their request is?
Mr. Chair, we'd made 2 requests. One was for support for the issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy with respect to just the ground floor amenity space, the pool, the fitness center, the physical therapy offices, and things like that. And then the second request was a partial temporary certificate of occupancy to allow us, effective August 1, to start moving residents into the assisted living facility.
Okay. You just gave a date. What was that date again?
August 1st.
August 1. Okay. So I came in as Nora was describing, I think, the response to that. So forgive me, I apologize. Abby, can you give me a synopsis of what the staff's position is on this request?
Staff is supportive of the two agreements that were submitted. We think that, if this board supports and if the zoning board modifies their approval, we think that satisfies conditions 3B and 3C, which pertain to securing the affordable units in perpetuity. So rather than a deed restriction, it's through another format by providing an agreement in case something were to happen to the Till home in the future, and also a monetary contribution to WAHA. But we had concerns about modifying condition 3D relative to occupancy of the assisted living prior to having the group home affordable units occupied.
Okay. And there was a request for the non-resident component to this, seeking for a temporary occupancy or early occupancy there as well? Okay. Okay, thanks. I think I'm caught up. I apologize to everyone for allowing me that time. Are there any additional comments by staff you'd like to submit? Okay. While I was out, did we hear from anyone else from the Housing Authority or Housing Partnership who'd like to comment?
Not yet. I think Kate had her hand raised.
I did.
Oh.
I just wanted to clarify one question that Nora spoke to, but I just want to get a little bit more of a definitive answer. So your expectation is that construction will be complete early July, and staff is already in place and residents have already been chosen. So how long would you anticipate the process to take to get people into the building from the time that construction is completed?
Are we talking about the Till project?
The Till.
Or Fox Hill project?
The Till.
Are you able to answer that?
I can't answer that as far as how long it'll take for them to come to occupy the space. So I could get clarity on that.
Right, because what Nora alluded to and what I'm feeling like is the question may be moot, right? If things go as you anticipate that they will go, then it will have Till will be populated, and you would go right to a certificate of occupancy, not a temporary. We wouldn't need to do it at all.
And we certainly hope that's the case. But the Till project is separate from the Fox Hill project, even though the fortunes of the two projects are joined in some significant ways. We don't have any control over, how Till's construction process is going, for example.
Right. So that where they meet is that they both originated, in the same place, and they both affect our the percentage of affordable homes we have in the town. So that's another place where they intersect. That's significant from my point of view.
I think I saw Ellen, had your hand up.
Yes, I finally found the button. This question actually is probably more for Nora. In general, I know once the group home units are finished, they don't automatically go on the SHI. So in general, how long does the process take from once they are deemed ready to be reviewed by whomever needs to review them to actually being accepted? And what happens if for whatever reason they aren't accepted? How does that work?
So under normal conditions, what happens is a group home is completed, and then DDS comes out to review the home upon issuance of a certificate of occupancy. They do an inspection, and then they start moving people in. And once they've done that, once the people are moved in and there's a successful inspection first, and then people have moved in, they send a letter to the Department of Housing and Community Development saying that this is an eligible property for listing on the subsidized housing inventory. Normally, that's a pretty quick process. I would say it could happen within a month in the past. However, there has been slow communication since the beginning of the pandemic, and the LifeWorks homes, the 5 group units in LifeWorks, which went online in September, of 2020, I believe. Is that right? No, September of 2019, I believe, right? Is that, Abby, do you recall the date that opened?
Yeah, it was only last September 2020.
Okay, so 2020. Can't remember. So that one has not yet, Department of Housing and Community Development have not yet received that eligibility letter from DDS. So those units have not yet been listed. We've been told it's coming any day now. In addition, the Department of Housing and Community Development only updates the subsidized housing inventory biannually. They are set to update it this December. So the hope is that we get DDS to approve both the LifeWorks units and the TIL units, and that they're all put on Westwood's SHI with the update in this coming December. That's the hope, but we have no control over that. Now, that said, the ZBA's decision says that the Fox Hill condition is met once the TIL units are determined eligible. So the only step we need is for DDS to send that letter to the Department of Housing and Community Development. We don't actually need them to be listed. We need them to be determined eligible for listing. So that could, presumably happen within a month, but I can't speak to how quickly DDS is going to send that letter. They seem to be behind schedule.
Sure. No, I think everything's a little behind schedule these days, but that's kind of why I was asking, is how much of an offset are we potentially talking about? So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and because we don't know that, we're more than willing to allow the first floor to be open as soon as possible. So if you just have to get through this process, if the planning board's in favor, then the zoning board hears it. If the zoning board's in favor and they amend condition 3B, which is what's holding you back right now, if we get that problem out of the way, then the building commissioner can be asked to issue a temporary certificate of occupancy as soon as the appeal period passes. So that would be sometime in mid-July, depending on the date the decision is recorded.
So there's no way possible that we can open up the first floor for another 6 weeks, which is basically completed at this point. There's no way this board here can authorize that to allow us. It has nothing to do with the residential, but I've got staff on deck. I've got a lot of going on that I don't want to wait another 6 weeks. And I asked this board to, if there's any way, if the building department does approve next week, to allow us to start opening up the first floor, which is non-residential. I'd hate to wait 6 weeks. It's some serious revenue impact. And the other thing too,
Tony,
And the other thing,
issue is the building department. You just said if they grant it next week, they can't grant it next week. So we have emails from Mike Perkins in the building department to your contractors, making it clear they cannot issue a temporary certificate of occupancy while you are in violation of the special permit. You're in violation because condition 3B of the special permit required the recording of the affordability agreements by January 1st, 2020. So until that's corrected, until that is changed,
I hear what you're saying, but we've
their
got a
hands are
business.
tied.
No, I know, but we have a business here that, I have anxious elderly people that want to get on the first floor. I have residents, a half a dozen, that are in need of assisted care services, assisted living services. And we asked for just a partial on the third floor and, a gradual move in August as the TIL project is completed. We don't expect to get anything permanent until TIL is done. But, all I ask and beg is for this committee to quickly, and whoever else can get involved, to allow us to start occupying the space as quickly as possible. I mean, we have a population in need here, and we got a business that we want to continue to run and expand. So
And
I
so
just, I hear everything you say, but whatever leniency, whatever flexibility this group can give us, we please ask for that as early as
so
an
the
occupancy
planning
is
board-
next week.
To be clear, the planning board can make a recommendation to the zoning board to remove all obstacles to the occupancy of the first floor. If the planning board chooses, they can do the same for occupancy of the residential units, but staff would caution against allowing occupancy of the residential units prior to the eligibility of the TIL property. Assuming the planning board makes a recommendation, whichever way they go, the zoning board then has the opportunity to review that recommendation at the meeting on June 16th. And then the building commissioner can take action after the appeal period has been settled on the amendment to the zoning board. So, the timing is what it is. So the question, I think the most important question, two questions before the board, are whether you find the proposed agreement that the town is in agreement with, if you find those two agreements satisfactory to make these affordable units equivalent to on-site perpetual affordable units. And for that first question, I think you do need to bring in the housing partnership and housing authority members so that you can have consultation as required in the zoning bylaw.
Nora, I just wanted to clarify. So are you saying that the planning board cannot change? Well, we would have to, whatever we do, it's a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals, because this type of a permitting, this special permit is granted by the zoning board of appeals, unlike the green property, which was open space residential permit through us. So
Right.
that we understand that, but the requirement that the deed be filed and everything, that was a condition of that permit. So I mean, are you saying that we and the zoning board cannot change that condition, that our hands are truly tied?
No, I'm saying you can change that condition. You could recommend to the zoning board that they change that condition, and the zoning board can vote to change that condition. However, if they vote to change that condition, we still need to write that amendment of the special permit, and we still have to allow the 20-day appeal period. So there's just absolutely nothing we can do to shorten that time frame. So
Okay.
it takes us to mid-July either way. So if everyone is completely in favor of both requests from Fox Hill Village, it will still take until mid-July before the building commissioner can consider a temporary certificate of occupancy.
So that the 20-day limit, then that's a function of the special permit itself, not of the condition.
Yes.
If we wanted to make other changes that were unrelated to this, you'd still have that. So the problem is for them, the problem is that you've got an existing contract, and there's no way to undo it without it going through that appeal period.
That's correct.
Does the town have any practice or precedent for granting at-risk building permits or Cs of O?
I'm not aware of any.
I mean, because the other thing I'm hearing is that part of the delay is that, you know, even if we get a favorable vote from the zoning board on a modification next week, we still have to wait for the decision to be written, filed, and recorded, and then have the 20-day appeal period. My question, I guess, is whether or not it's possible for us to proceed at risk, understanding that if somebody appeals, we might have to close our doors again, which of course nobody wants, but we've had strong community support for this project all along. And I think generally people in the town feel like it is a good thing for Fox Hill to be able to continue with its business and run a successful business and provide these resources to these members of the community who, as Tony said, really need it. So I do wonder if there is any avenue whereby, you know, the temporary certificate of occupancy, if we get a favorable vote at the hearing, could be issued at risk. And again, the risk is ours, that if for some reason, you know, we are appealed, you know, we're not able to continue to operate the space.
So it's the question of issuing a temporary certificate of occupancy is completely in the hands of the building commissioner, and that would be a question to ask the building commissioner. My understanding is that he's put in writing several times now to your contractor that he would not consider a temporary certificate of occupancy until the appeal period has passed. I'm not aware of any certificates of occupancy that have ever been issued in Westwood in an at-risk condition, but that's a question that you can take to the building commissioner once
So
you have.
Nora, is that something that you can have a discussion with the building commission to allow us some leniency there? You know, I mean, what risk is out there at this point? I mean, we're full. I mean, our project is complete. We've made the big investment. Till's well underway. You know, I just don't want to wait that 21-day appeal period. I got a business that I want to keep improving and not have any financial risk right now in our end.
So that's a question to take to the building commissioner. I'm happy to take it to him. My understanding from the comments that he's written so far is he does not believe it's lawful or that he has the authority to do that. So I'm happy to discuss that and greater length, and Pat Ahern can join in that conversation as well. But I don't expect a temporary certificate of occupancy to be issued before the appeal period passes.
Nora,
Yes.
I had a question just to clarify. If something were to be pursued in an at-risk situation and an appeal is made on the 18th day, and Ms. Schneider says, we have to close our doors, we're basically asking anyone who's moved into the assisted living situation to move out? Is that what close the doors means in this situation?
Assuming, and Tony, you can provide more color about what it looks like to be starting to occupy that space. Realistically, I'm not sure that we're looking at moving anybody in before August anyway.
No, but I
think we
need a date. I mean, I'm looking at a target date of August 1st so I can have residents and families prepared for that move, so that's why, that date's important now so that I can start giving families the alert that they're going to move in. For me to wait till mid-July or whatever, then now I'm probably into September, you know what I mean? And that's really, a significant, issue for residents that are in need right now. And it's a significant issue for our finances here,
I completely understand. And, that's one of the reasons we've been discussing this for as long as we have. But once you get the decision, there is a mandatory appeal period. And I don't think there's anything that the building commissioner can do to waive that. I don't think it's within his authority.
Pat, are you able to comment on that, just to enlighten us as to your thoughts on the legality of it?
It is at the discretion of the building commissioner. I'm happy to have a discussion with him about your request and understand his position on it. But we're not going to resolve that issue tonight without the building commissioner here. And I think it's more work to follow.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, I notice we have a considerable large contingent from our housing authority and partnership. And I would welcome any questions or comments from any of this group. You simply raise your hand and I'll call on you, and would love to hear your thoughts on what we've been discussing so far.
Chris, are you looking for electronic hands or?
Oh, yeah, there are some people that I cannot see. Let's see. There are 3 people I cannot see, but I can see a good number of others. Mr. Rizzoli, I see you're interested in speaking. You are muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Committee. I am Lou Rizzoli, the chairman of the Westwood Housing Authority and president of the WAHA. So I think we had discussed this at your last meeting. I thank the members of the planning board, Nora, Abby, for your thoughts when we dealt with the Green Company. And I think it was that we worked out a fairly good resolution of it. And I've seen what the proposal is here for Fox Hill to send, as their units, their market rate units are sold, to send the money. I think it comes out to the total would come out to 399,000. It's some odd figure of 16,000 something per unit. And so this is something that I think has worked well with the Green Company, and probably a model for others to follow if that's what the planning board sees fit to do. And I think it's this is probably the best way for Westwood to be able to provide more affordable housing and to be able to get this housing on our SHI, the subsidized housing inventory. I also noticed that, as Nora very well explained, the process of getting this approved by the DHCD, that we are in the process right now of getting our 2 units that we bought in 2020 to single family houses. And it's quite a job. We sent the preliminary ones in March, and we just got a response last week by my making several calls. But we're hopeful that probably in June, we'll get the approval for the two single-family houses we bought, and that both of them will be placed on the SHI in December. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Anyone else present have any questions or comments on the request?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Sawitsky would like to speak, I
I
believe.
apologize. I did see your hand earlier. I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Sawitsky.
Thank you very much. I just would like to be able to work closely with the town in determining what constitutes eligibility for listing on the SHI. I've had several conversations, as I'm sure you have as well, with DHCD. They've made it clear that they only report biannually, which has already been noted. But they've also told me that they do not report individual houses, that they have one figure that reflects however many units within a town are on the SHI. And the combination of the lack of the length of time it takes for them to respond and the desire that they have for confidentiality for their clients makes me hope that we can work reasonably to get to a point where we could open up even if the SHI listing is delayed. It's my understanding that you will be working off the 2020 census in terms of the number of units within the town. The assisted living units at Fox Hill were not built in 2020, and they will not be on the denominator for this next 10-year period. And so I'm just hoping that we can work together to facilitate getting our assisted living open as soon as possible.
I think we all share that goal.
Any other comments, discussion from members of the Housing Authority? Yes, Mr. Alden, if you could identify yourself.
Hey, Eric Alden on the member of the Westwood Housing Authority. This may be the answer to this may be as simple as we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I just wanted to piggyback on something Ms. Rawlings mentioned. If the 5 affordable units count towards the SHI, and in the future, if Till were to leave the premises and the property would resort to the town, and the town would try to find an operator, and if they couldn't find an operator, town council mentioned that they could possibly, or the thinking would be that they convert it to a single family home and sell it. So my question is, it's 5 units currently. If that scenario were to take place, it looks like we may lose potentially 4 units on the SHI. And again, the answer may be we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Thank you.
So I think I can speak to that. The agreements, there are 2 agreements that have been proposed that the town and Fox Hill Village have come to terms on. One agreement relates to the Till property and what happens if they lose eligibility or never gain eligibility for listing on the SHI, where the town takes it over, and the town then is free to either use the property or sell the property, use it for affordable housing, or sell it and put the proceeds towards the construction or renovation of property for affordable housing, and also use the proceeds that are being in this agreement being donated to WAHA. All of those 3 options are combined to create up to 5 residential affordable units. So the hope is that Till will receive its eligibility and run a group home for the indefinite future. But if that failed to happen, even if it failed to happen immediately, if for some reason Till does not receive eligibility from DDS, which is hard to imagine, the town would have the option. The property could be sold. It could be sold as a market rate property at today's prices. There may be enough funds that would come from that to actually produce with the additional funding from Fox Hill Village. There may be enough to actually create at least 4 units. The 4 units, not 5 units, is the Fox Hill Village requirement for their development. 5 was the additional provision in order to entice the planning board to accept it as at least equivalent to on-site units. So I think the agreements do address that. And whether TIL operates now and ceases to operate sometime in the future, or whether it happens fairly quickly, I think we would have everything addressed. The timing issue about when DDS sends the information to DHCD, we just don't have control on. And as Heather mentioned, they don't send a letter to DHCD saying the property at 230 High Street in Westwood is now eligible. What they send is a letter saying Westwood has a total of X group home units that are eligible for listing on the SHI. So we're hoping to hear from DDS that they have updated that number to include the LifeWorks home and the TIL property before December. And we're hoping it'll be as early as August, but we just don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Nora's. My concern was just that if we end up getting it earmarked as 5 units and then something down the line happened, it's hard to replace 5 units.
It is. We'd have to replace 4, not
Like 4
5.
units.
4 required,
So, thank you, though.
1 in the property, and we'd have to find 3 others some other way.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Chris has his hand up. Chris, is it Privatera?
Chris, you're muted. Christine.
Christine, sorry.
Okay, yeah, Christine Privatera.
All right.
So it seems like the money that we will receive, I'm a member of WAHA and Westwood Housing Authority. It seems like the money, the $399,000 that we will receive from Fox Hill is different from the Green Company money that we are receiving. That will eventually be $450,000, and we can use that money to buy affordable housing, or take it, buy a few one houses, etc. But now for this project, there's a condition that we cannot use the $399,000 because it has to be set aside if TIL.
That's not the case.
Well, the wording says that. The town could then use the $399K as needed towards affordable housing. And this is after, the wording's right there in the memo. That says, with the clause that if anything were to happen to TIL, the land will revert to the town. The town could then use the $399,000 as needed towards affordable housing. So I don't know exactly what's in the agreement, but Nora, that's how this reads. So I don't know if that needs to change.
I'll defer to Pat on that, but the intention is for the funding to be used in a similar manner to the funding that comes from the Green property. It's funding to offset a future need for replacing affordable housing units, but it's funding that could be used immediately upon receipt.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I agree with Nora's interpretation.
Okay. Any other members wish to speak or ask questions? Okay, don't see anyone's hand raised. So, Nora, it appears the questions at hand, is the planning board ready to make a recommendation for or against the request for the temporary certificate of occupancy? And you've indicated that it really doesn't even matter at this point from a timing perspective.
It may not. We don't know yet because we don't know when TIL will be finished. But I think the important question before the board right now is, do you find the current proposal from Fox Hill Village with the 2 agreements, the Affordable Housing Agreement and the Municipal Affordable Housing Agreement, do you find those to create a project which produces affordable units that are at least equivalent to on-site perpetual units. So I think that's the question you first have to answer. And then if you do, then you recommend to the zoning board that they accept this proposal in that light. And then the second question has to do with whether you would encourage the select board to change their condition requiring occupancy of the property to wait until till is determined eligible for the SHI. And what you could do is one of two things. You could either say that the zoning board should allow the building commissioner to grant occupancy of the non-residential portions, or you should, or the till, that the zoning board should get out of the way of this, the building commissioners allowing occupancy of the full building. Those are the options before you. Again, it's just removing an obstacle. It's not granting issuance. Neither the planning board nor the zoning board can issue an occupancy permit or a temporary occupancy permit. But conditions can be amended.
Nor can they order the building commissioner to issue.
Correct. But they what they can do is they can amend the conditions of their decision so that that's not a prohibition. The current decision is a prohibition to the issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy.
Okay. Dave, did you have your hand up?
Yes, yeah. So I've been thinking about this ever since our last discussion. And I think the concerns I had originally revolved around the impact that this would have on the SHI, and it was early in the year. What I'm hearing is that no matter what we do, the process for getting these units listed is going to take a while. It's going to take longer. It's not going to be, nothing's going to happen instantaneously here. And so I'm less concerned that any decision today is going to cause a dramatic and sudden huge problem with the SHI. Like the numbers come out and they say we're one house short. It's not going to be because of any decision we make here today, because the census has already been done. So I think I'm more focused on what can we do to bring more affordable housing into the town. And this seems like a reasonable approach here. It seems that we could, with the additional money, so if they had just gotten, if things had proceeded more quickly, there would not even be this $399,000 contribution, and you'd simply have the Till property occupied, and everything would have gone great. But that didn't happen. So now what we were looking at is a proposal that includes an additional almost $400,000 to the Housing Authority, which could be used to purchase a house in Westwood, a two-family perhaps, that would add a couple of units of affordable housing for families. The 5 group home units, it appears that it's not going to just evaporate tomorrow. They're really close to having this done. So I want to move this along. I do want to remove impediments here. So I think that nothing we can do will change the 20-day appeal period for the immediate occupancy and all. But I think that the rest of this proposal is a reasonable approach, and that in the end, when the dust is all cleared on this, we will be a lot better off. Worst case scenario, to address what Mr. Alden had raised. So you've got the money that's going to Waha to hopefully purchase a property that might add a couple of units there. And then the town owns a piece of land with a mostly complete structure on it. So I think that there's a reasonable risk to be taken there. So I'd like to see if we can, it's not going to benefit us to block at this point. Like I was thinking originally, if we could, do we need to put more pressure on Till to make them build this thing faster and get it done? Do we need to get the deed filed with the registry and all that stuff? Those things seem to be pretty much in motion now. So I don't see that holding strictly to this is going to help the situation. So I'm in favor of supporting what's been proposed here.
Okay. So as Nora indicated, we have 2 questions really before the board. And the first one, I think Dave just touched on the first one, at least. So Abby, would we be looking for a motion and a vote for the recommendation? Is that what we're looking for?
Right. I'd recommend first taking up propose a motion having to do with if you determine that the proposal for the affordable housing restriction and the municipal contribution to WAHA, if those are, you should make a determination if that meets the town's affordable housing needs.
Okay. So Abby just read a proposed motion. I'd be.
So I'd like to make that motion. I don't know if I need to restate it.
Say so moved or something to that effect.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend the proposal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote for affirmation or voting in favor of the motion. Kate,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So Nora, if you could crystallize the crux of the second matter before us.
So the second matter has to do with a recommendation to the zoning board for amendment of the current decision. The current decision has several conditions in several subconditions in condition 3. One of those conditions in 3B, Abby, do you have it handy that you can read the current condition 3B? If not, I think I can.
Have it handy if you need it.
Okay, if you could, Johanna, if you could just read condition 3B as it exists.
Sure. Condition 3B of the current ZBA special permit says the applicant and property owner, Fox Hill Village Homeowners Corporation, shall submit a deed restriction sufficient to maintain 5 affordable units in perpetuity at 230 High Street for review and approval by Westwood's Town Council, Zoning and Housing Agent, and Town Planner. Such deed restriction shall be submitted within 30 days of the close of the RRC special permit hearing or by January 1, 2020, whichever is sooner.
All right, and then condition 3C requires that that affordable housing restriction be recorded forthwith. So those are the two conditions that are problematic to the building commissioner's issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy. So we will be asking the zoning board to amend those conditions so that it clears the way for the building commissioner to consider an issuance of a certificate of occupancy for at least the first floor. Then there's condition 3F that, if you could read that, Johanna.
Sure. In the event that the proposed group home does not result in the listing of at least 5 DDS units on the SHI listing, Fox Hill Village shall return to the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Board with an alternative plan for fulfilling the affordability requirement for a minimum of 4 affordable units as required by section 8.4.3.6 of the zoning bylaw, and no certificate of occupancy of any of the 24 assisted living units, nor any new independent living unit at Fox Hill Village on Longwood Drive shall be issued unless and until the planning board approves and the Fox Hill Village Homeowners Corporation fully implements said alternative plan for fulfilling the affordability requirements.
Right, so that's the condition that prevents the occupancy of any of the 24 units until the Till property is determined eligible for listing on the SHI. So that's the second question that the Fox Hill Village wants to hear, if you will recommend that the zoning board remove the tie between the two and allow the occupancy of the 24 assisted units or some portion of those units prior to the determination of eligibility for the Till households.
Any further questions by board members on this particular issue?
Or I have a follow-up. You had mentioned for the Green Company project that the group home was not had not been certified yet, right? And I just wondered, how was that not made a condition? I mean, it's ultimately right back at us, I guess. But is there some reason that you think it's different from this?
Yes, I think the language was slightly different, and in the two decisions, the planning board decision versus the zoning board decision for this property, And there was also a different condition that the Green Company had on-site affordable units for 2 of the required units and then off-site in the group home for the others. And they were able to apply the on-site affordable units, which are eligible upon issuance of a building permit, as opposed to actually upon issuance of a building permit application, I believe, as opposed to upon occupancy. So they just had a little bit of a different requirement there. They're also a phased development where they're not opening everything at once. But it comes down to the language of the zoning board decision, which, as Johanna just read, says that none of the units can be occupied until the TIL units are determined eligible for listing.
Right, and I'll just add to that, also with the Green Company, the LifeWorks home was occupied months before the first occupancy at the Green Company. So we got the initial DDS authorization letter allowing occupancy of that. So the timing was the opposite at that project.
And so we're hoping, so DDS was quick to say that the group home met their conditions at the LifeWorks property, but they're not as quick to get the eligibility letter to Department of Housing and Community Development. We're hoping in this case, it'll be similar, that the TIL property will be determined eligible, that DDS will authorize residents to move into that, and they will give us a letter saying that they've done so. And it's still a matter of waiting for the units to be listed. But I think that condition could be rewritten in a way that allows the occupancy of the Fox Hill Village properties following occupancy of the TIL properties. That might be the way to go with it, so that we know that the TIL property becomes occupied by eligible residents that meet DDS requirements, but we don't have to wait for the Department of Housing and Community Development to receive the formal increase in the count. I think that rewording of that decision would be appropriate. And if the zoning board can do that, if you're willing to recommend that, and if the zoning board is willing to make that change, then I believe we're only waiting out the appeal period. And then sometime in mid-July, everything is settled and the building commissioner can be asked to issue certificates of occupancy.
Right. If we could get some commitment, because the concern would just be that once we release everything, then, unexpected things happen. But if we could get some kind of a commitment that they said that there were 5 people identified already, and it sounds like things are going great. But if we could have some assurance of that, if they could provide some assurance of that to the ZBA, perhaps that would be a way to make this happen.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't want to, I don't want to stand in the way of anyone being able to run their business the way they want to in Westwood. But I do, and I'm very happy to have to look at the partial temporary occupancy for the first floor. But I do think, and giving the time, it may work out that this is just fine anyway. I do want the 5 units occupied by appropriate people before we have residents at Fox Hill.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. So I think we've discussed this enough. I think we could, oh, yes, Ms. Sawicki.
Hi, I just wanted, thank you for all of this conversation and discussion. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness. I just, as long as you're going to be taking some technical votes, and I wanted to point out to you that I believe the conditions in 3D also need to be modified. And we have not discussed 3D yet tonight. But 3D says the applicant and property owner, Fox Hill Village Homeowners Corporation, shall submit to the housing and zoning agent and town planner proof of eligibility for listing the group home on Westwood's SHI. Said submission in form satisfactory to the housing and zoning agent shall be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy of any of the 24 assisted living units or any new independent living unit at Fox Hill Village on Longwood Drive. And I would respectfully request that you consider modifying that term as well.
Nora, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I think consistent with the position that Kate just took, there's willingness to allow occupancy of the assisted living units after the Till house is occupied by eligible residents. So not necessarily wait for Department of Housing and Community Development's certification that it's ready for listing, but do wait for DDS to put people in that building who will make it eligible for listing. So I think there could be language that the zoning board would be encouraged to consider that would do that. So you still have that minimal threshold of making sure that the group home is constructed, ready for occupancy, and that eligible residents can move into that building. And once that happens, then Fox Hill Village could receive its certificate of occupancy to begin occupying its residential units.
Yes, Heather?
So just to give you a little backstory, I know that Till does not want to bring on all 5 residents at the same time. There is a process, a best practice of bringing in people slowly and getting them acclimated, and to bring 5 people in all at once is not what they want to do, and they won't do it, and we understand why. Similarly, in our assisted living, we would take the same approach of a slow fill up of our spaces to help our staff get acclimated to the residents and vice versa. I think we are asking for a temporary certificate of occupancy only for 1 floor, which is 12 units. And I believe, I'm not very good at math, but I think that means that there would have to be 2 spaces in the group home occupied before we could fill up 1 floor. And I would request that you would at least consider some flexibility in light of the populations that are being served and the need to move more slowly to make sure that their settling is appropriate.
So Nora, how does the town feel about segmenting this even further? So 2 people in the group home, 1 floor is the request for, or 12, half the units assisted living.
So the final decision would be rest with the ZBA, but I would think that as long as the units in Fox Hill Village are offset prior to occupancy by units that are occupied in the group home, then I would think that would be acceptable. But you know, the planning board should decide what it feels is acceptable, recommend that to the zoning board, and then let the zoning board members write their conditions accordingly. So I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't recommend that the planning board give very specific language to the zoning board to put in their conditions. I would recommend instead that you say that you would find it acceptable if they allowed occupancy on a proportional basis, with the understanding that every Fox Hill Village unit that receives its certificate of occupancy is offset prior to that issuance by units, the appropriate number of units in the Till group home, and then let the ZBA work out the precise language.
Okay. Ellen, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did, but my question was kind of organically answered in that discussion. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on the matter? Oh, I heard a ding, but I don't see a hand.
I just wanted to say that I like that proportional occupancy. So I'd be prepared to make a motion if somebody would care to suggest one.
Abby, you've been taking notes, it looks like. Would you be able to give us a concise motion or long motion?
All right, I will try, and Nora will jump in.
Or Pat.
Okay. Let's see. So I think the motion would be to recommend to allow the building commissioner to consider temporary occupancy for the non-residential portions of Fox Hill, subject to the two agreements, the municipal contribution agreement and the affordable housing restriction being fully executed and both recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and to allow the building commissioner to grant occupancy to Fox Hill Village on a proportional basis consistent with occupancy of the group home units.
So moved.
Uh,
Point of
Ellen?
order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sorry.
Is this motion a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Abby?
Yes, I think it is, right, Nora?
I believe it should be.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
part of the motion should be stated as a recommendation.
yes, I believe it should.
Okay.
Ms. Nguyen, are you willing to amend your motion to make it a
I'm-
recommendation? to
I'm
the
willing to amend the motion to make it a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, we have a motion and Ellen is raising her hand for
I
a comment.
have one quick question
Sure.
on the motion. The term occupancy, when we're talking about the residential occupancy, are we still talking about a temporary occupancy with this recommendation, or would that be for, I just want to be specific.
A temporary occupancy would apply to the non-residential units. I think the residential units, there's no such thing as temporary occupancy. When someone moves in, they're in for good. So I think that we would only be talking about a final certificate of occupancy for the residential units.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote on this motion. Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Ms. Rawlings,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck. Hope it goes seamlessly for you all.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. And Housing Authority and Partnership, thank you so much for joining in with us tonight. Appreciate your time. Good night. Okay, Abby, next on the agenda is Homes at 45, Abbey Road.
Yep.
And we'll wait a little bit. Is the applicant or is anyone from Green Company here tonight, or is this just discussion amongst us?
The applicant is coming in now,
Okay.
Mr. Green. This is for, I can summarize. You have an existing tri-party agreement that accounted for the initial start of construction. So in the fall, Mr. Green was before you, looking for the age-restricted homes to be released from the covenant in your acceptance of a tri-party agreement to cover the cost of construction. So you did accept that and issued that back in the fall, in November. Since that time, the applicant applied for and you granted a special permit amendment to the development that included 2 additional units. So what you have before you tonight is an updated and amended tri-party agreement that includes the 2 additional age-restricted units for a total of 42, and an updated cost estimate from Beta Group for the new cost of all the remaining work for the full development. So this is through all phases of development. You had in your packet a draft tri-party agreement and the cost estimate of construction from Beta Group, which amounted to, I believe it was $326,000. So you're being asked tonight to amend the tri-party agreement for this new amount.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Green, good to see you here. I think you're not muted, but I can't hear you.
I can hear you at a distance. It's very quiet.
Is it better now?
It's really hard to hear you.
I can dial in. I may need to reboot. Can you hear if I shout? Is that better?
It's the same. It's not better, but
Had this happen once before.
I can hear you if I turn my speakers all the way up. But as soon as anyone else talks, I'm going to blow my speakers.
This is this should be a little better, is it?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay. I'll be brief to make
Okay.
this work better as well. And that is, Abby suggested that we do this for the entire project. Initially, it was as a phased development. And I agree, I think it makes it much simpler. So that's why you see the amount going from $77,000 up to $320,000. And so this way we'll just be doing releases going forward, and we'll probably come back. Honestly, I don't think we'll come back for another year, maybe more, when it's done, because it's a bond. So we just pay a fee to have the bond in place. It only becomes interest when we have to use it, which we don't anticipate. So I think that's a good idea. We agree with all the numbers. We spoke with the folks at Beta and are in complete agreement, and our bank is on board. And so if you approve this, our bank will sign the document for the $326,000. I do have one request, which is in our initial permitting of the site, we had concrete wheel stops at our parking spaces where we have head-in parking adjacent to our sidewalk. And there's a sidewalk that runs through the community on one side. And what we would like to do is, we never have used these before, and there's a 4-inch berm separating the 20-foot deep parking space from a 4-foot wide sidewalk. And we would like to test over the next, whatever time frame you feel comfortable with, 6 months or a year. We have about 10 residents living there now, so parking spaces are being used, and people are parking when they come to visit the design studio. And see if we have any problem with cars blocking the sidewalk. The reason we really don't want these concrete wheel stops is when the winter time comes, it's a huge problem for snow plowing because they can't back blade because they're not that good knowing where to put the blade. And so they end up plowing snow onto the sidewalk, which makes it less safe. And we really like to avoid that.
Abby, is there anything in our packet pertaining to this? I didn't see-
No, not yet. So the 14 wheel stops were provided in the cost estimate of remaining items to be completed. So I think what Dan is looking for is your initial thought on, would you be willing to entertain a modification in the future to remove the requirement for those wheel stops?
Thank you.
Well, I think at this point, we can't, 2 of our board members weren't on for this, so I think we'd need some visual assistance with this. We need a lot more to go on before we can say we'll entertain it right now, but that's not a guarantee. Obviously.
Mr. Chairman, this is also not an agenda item. So I think it's probably not proper for you to take it up at this point in time.
Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, I apologize. I wasn't asking you to take it up. I meant to say, because the 14 wheel stops are there as part of the bonding or the tri-party agreement, we are not installing them right now. And I guess I'd like to understand the methodology of how you would like me to bring this to you. If you want me to make it another agenda item, I'm not sure of the process how to review this, where we would like to test and see if indeed there is a problem that the wheel stops would be preventing, or if they're not necessary.
in the future.
Right, so I'd recommend a written request to the planning board as a modification or as a minor modification that the planning board, along with that section of the plan that shows where those wheel stops are, so the planning board can review them at a future meeting.
Okay.
And I would appreciate if they are in now, some pictures of the areas that you're talking about.
Yes, we can show there are 40 of those wheel stops on the playing field parking lot. And so we can show what they look like there, and we can show the parking spaces that we have created so far.
I don't want to get into it too much per Mr. Ahern's recommendation. So I just wanted to, that would be helpful, I think.
Then in order to expedite this, I would just like to say I'm in full agreement with the number of $326,000.
All right. And Abby, we obviously have that from Beta, they're the ones who derived that number. And that's the town's, the staff's recommendation.
Yes, to accept the amended tri-party agreement from Westwood Green LLC for the OSRD special permit for the homes at 45 in the amount of $326,000.
Any questions from board members for the applicant?
So I'll make that motion, or so moved, what Abby just said.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Rawlings?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
And then planning board members, if you're able to come by the office to sign the tri-party agreement, if people are available on Thursday, or it also has to be notarized. So we have someone in the building department. She's out tomorrow, but she will be in the office on Thursday. If you're available to come by on Thursday, we could have you sign it and notarize at the same time if you could bring your ID.
Okay, what time would you want us there between?
Anytime, maybe except 12 and 1. So are you able to come between 8:30 and noon, and then 1 and?
All right, just wanted people to have the opportunity to have that information. They could plan their Thursday. Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is OSRD Recess Way Subdivision. Abby, can you shed a little light on this?
Yes. So I'm bringing in the applicant right now as well. Mr. John Joyce is here. If you recall, from 2015, there was another OSRD open space redevelopment subdivision approved off Far Ridge Road in 2015. There was a covenant that secured the 3 lots. It was 3 house lots and 1 open space lot. So they're now looking for a release of the lots from the covenant, and for you to accept a bond in the amount of $465,937,000. That was based on an estimate from Beta Group in your packet for the cost of the remaining work within the roadway for the municipal services and utilities. So essentially, they're looking for you to vote to release the lots from the covenant and accept this new performance guarantee of the bond amount. You had a copy of the bond in your packet that I uploaded earlier today. I had seen a draft before, but the original is coming from the bank.
Okay. I see the applicant is here, Mr. Joyce. Do you have anything further you'd like to add?
No, I think Abby covered it.
Okay. And Abby, so based on your recommendation, it sounds like it's staff's recommendation we approve this change?
Yes, and then also when you come by for the other documents, if you could sign this as well. So essentially, you'll sign the lot releases. Those will also be notarized, and then all that material gets recorded at the registry and kept in our town files as well.
Okay. Any questions from board members for the applicant or for town staff? Okay. I guess I'd entertain a motion.
I will make a motion that the planning board release all the lots, 3 buildable lots, 1 open space lot from the covenant, and hereby accepts the insurance performance bond from Main Street American Insurance in the amount of $465,937 to ensure that the work for the Recess Way OSRD definitive subdivision off Far Reach Road.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Larkin.
Yes.
Sorry, wrong.
It's okay.
Which would you prefer? I apologize.
I have too many names. The answer is yes, either way.
Either whomever I call upon. All right. Kate, why don't you choose
Yeah.
first names if everyone's all right with that. Dave.
Yes.
All right. And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Joyce, can I ask any thoughts on when a shovel might go into the ground?
Well, as of today, we already have one house constructed and that's already been framed.
So it's already happened.
Yes, and for the house part of it, and we've got, the town had us do water lines. We already have our water main in there with a hydrant. We've got a cul-de-sac in there. So it means, access to one house, and we're starting house 2 right now. We'll be getting ready some ledge in the next, call it 3 weeks.
So the first house is built, is it occupied?
No, it's not occupied. No,
Okay.
It's it'll probably be closing walls in July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember this.
We had a bunch of ledge back there too. It took some time.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much and best of luck. moving
Yeah, thank
forward.
you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Abby, that's it for things on the agenda. We have other business items. Abby, would like to care to comment on our posting?
So we've posted the planning board opening in several locations, kind of on our website, on the planning board's page, also on the home page. You just have to scroll down to the news section. We try to, through a blast in social media, Westwood Wire, Westwood Media Centers helped promote it. So you do have, you have 2 applications that you've received so far. The applications for anyone that's interested are due on by Monday, June 14th. So if anyone's interested, apply by the 14th. And then you have your meeting scheduled to be a joint meeting to attend the select board meeting on Monday, the 14th. I don't know the full agenda yet of where the timing is. Their meeting starts at 6, but as that gets closer next week, we'll get you the final agenda.
It's the
21st.
21st.
Yeah, it's the select board meeting, the joint meeting's the 21st.
Yes, that's right. Sorry. The applications are due by the 14th.
Right.
1 week later on Monday, June 21st is your meeting that evening.
And point of order, Mr. Chairman, we don't know where we'll be meeting or how we'll be meeting.
Right, we were going to talk about that.
Because as of the 15th, the state of emergency will be lifted. And so we may be meeting at the Gillette meeting room at the police station, unless the legislature extends our ability to meet remotely like this. There's a bill moving through. I don't know where it is right now, but we're trying to keep a careful eye on it and let you know if we can meet remotely on the 21st.
And that means obviously that our next planning board meeting could very well be back at Carby Street.
Yes.
in the Champagne meeting room. Do we run into any, I guess, no, we didn't continue any hearings. So did we continue hearings before to Zoom? we running into a problem there with
No, and
notice?
we had one hearing notice. We have one application scheduled for the 29th, and we included that it will be in person at Carby Street unless, unless the state of emergency is extended to allow this, then we'll go remote. So we provided some instructions. So we'll do that going forward in this interim period. So we just had to write it both ways.
Okay. All right, well, we'll wait to hear from you how we're going to proceed on next Monday's meeting, or 2 Mondays from now, the 21st, and our next, which is what date? Our next meeting?
June 29th.
Okay. All right. We had minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to take a look at May 18th minutes submitted?
Yeah, I had one. Let me see if I can pull it up. It was on in the section when we were talking about recommending people to be appointed for committees. We listed twice. It looks like it was just a cut paste or something, but
Okay.
minor, but
Okay. Abby, do you see that
Oh,
change?
yes, I see that. Yeah, we have the exact thing twice. So we'll just delete one of the bullets.
I see Jessica laughing. All right. Any other comments on the minutes?
I'm sure it was cut and paste. I do like to do that a lot.
Any amendments? Or if not any more, then a motion to accept.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded, sorry.
Any further discussion on the minutes?
Just a big thank you.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Dave,
Yes.
Ellen,
yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. Okay, Abby, any other items to discuss? We're good on our summer schedule. We're going to meet on the 21st and then the 29th. Anyone else have any concerns they want to bring up or things to share from boards they happen to be, committees they're on? No?
Abby, did everyone sign the registry and land court papers? You had that on your other business.
Kate signed, so I'm hoping when
We don't have to call
okay.
anyone out, but you
I
had
thought
it on.
just when board members, if you're able to come by this Thursday, or if you give me a heads up, I just want to make sure we have a notary public available when you come, so that when you sign these 2 forms tonight that you approve tonight, that we have a notary service available. So if you give me a heads up on that, but while you're there, you could also, I have those the registry forms ready for you to sign too.
This is going to be like a house closing. You're going to sign your name so much. Okay. Nothing more to discuss? Pat?
Yeah, this is the first this is the first planning board meeting, I think, in I don't know, in many, many months where there's been no public hearing, no public, there's been nothing on the agenda that was a public that involved public input. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Things go a little different when you have that. Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Dave?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
I vote yes. We are in adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.